Good afternoon. We are here on another edition of the Conversations for the Black to School series. And I am here with a good friend, little sister, mentee, all the above, Miss Gabrielle Butler. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Crystal.
It is so good to see you back in your Kansas City glory. And so I wanted to talk to you for a couple of reasons. And it's kind of like we have these parallel journeys in some ways, going from the same high school. Of course, me being a senior when you were a freshman in high school. And then, of course, the same way when we were,
In
we're
college.
both at Drake. And so just like I said, wanted to have a conversation when we think about what it means to be a Black person in some of these educational situations. So just have a few questions for you. And like I said, we'll go through the questions and just kind of go where the conversation leads us. So just kind of getting started out, just want to talk to you about, the value of education. How was that instilled in you by your parents, by your family? Um, and then what did you just notice about the experiences of others around you when it came to pursuing education?
I mean, college wasn't necessarily like a huge thing. Like my dad went to college for a little bit. My mom opted not to go. But for reasons came from Panama. She's an immigrant and she felt like her English wasn't good enough to be in a collegiate level, even though she went to Lincoln Prep also. So
Oh, I think I did I know that?
I don't
I
know.
don't know. I don't know. Yeah, awesome.
She went to Lincoln, and all of that, but she kind of shied away from college because she felt like, her English wasn't on par quite yet at
Mm-hmm.
the um, but I think my parents always knew that I, in particular, would go to college, or just because I was a studious student and education was important to me, and I cared about school and I cared about my grades, and so that was always the track or focus for me. I don't recall there really ever being any other options per se
Mm-hmm.
for me, so it just kind of comes from there.
So even so you are the middle child.
I
So in having an older sister, do you kind of even remember, some of her experiences when it came to school? I don't think she went to Lincoln as well. And just when I think about, sometimes the trajectory, so to speak, of a Lincoln student, for me, it was more of like, where are people going to school, not an if. And so just, anything kind of related to when you think about, all right, well, this is what my sister did or didn't do. Was that kind of a part of your decision making process?
Well, yeah, my older sister like was not a school type person. It
Mm-hmm.
just wasn't her thing. I mean, she went to school, she finished school,
Mm-hmm.
but she was got more into different trades, including like hairstyling for a little bit. Now she has her own cake business and stuff like that. So she's
Yes.
always kind of been more of an entrepreneurial, finding her own way type of person. Me, like you said, going to Lincoln is like being breeded. I don't terrible, but when you go to Lincoln, it's not if you're going to college, it's where is are you going to Stanford? Are you going to Missouri?
Right.
I went to high school with kids that literally went to Stanford and Harvard and Yale.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a if, it's where. It's what decision are you making? It's not, oh, maybe I might. No. You go to Lincoln, you going to college pretty much. Like 99% of our graduating class, mine did, went to college. I don't
Yeah.
know who didn't. And like maybe people won't finish, but
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty much standard. And I think it's just embedded in Lincolnites and just embedded in our culture is just kind of, and not that because I don't want it to sound elitist and stuff. Well, because people,
I know. From firsthand experience.
yeah, coming from Lincoln, everybody, in the city, people have their own perceptions of each high school that you went to. And
Very true.
Lincoln got the you think you all better than everybody stuck up kind of thing that people tagged on us. And I mean, I guess we were fine with it because it was like, we're doing what we have to do to get to the next level, whatever that may be. So for me in like choosing colleges and stuff, like there was we had so many different people. We had people going to HBCUs, people going to these Ivy Leagues and stuff like that. But a good number of people I graduated went to what I call like the local five, which is like KU, MU, Mizzou, UCM, anywhere like between the two states of Missouri and Kansas, K-State.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like my plan at first was to go to Mizzou. I had it all mapped out. The Christmas.
I was like, wait, again, kind of similar paths. That was where I was going to, and then
right. And I was going to journalism school at Mizzou. And I had, the Christmas before graduating, I had got Mizzou stuff for Christmas. I got the hoodies, the lanyards, my dad was ready for me to go to Mizzou.
Right.
He wanted one of his kids, that's his favorite college, whatever. One of us had to go to Mizzou. But then my dear old brother-in-law, Ricky Hundley.
Shout out to Ricky.
Was like, oh, have you looked at Drake? And I'm like, Drake? Ain't nobody told me about Drake. And at the time, his really, really good friend was, doing admissions at the time. And so I basically went up there and went on a visit to look at Drake. And that's kind of all how it happened. Like, I just made my decision. I changed my decision based on feelings, which is not always the best thing to do. But in this case, when I went to go visit Drake, it was something about it that I was like, you know what? I feel like I can make a name for myself here. And I feel like this place is small enough for me to make a really great impact. And I just felt like it was supposed to be where I was supposed to go. Like, I don't even know how to explain that, but it's literally, I had been on Mizzou's campus plenty of times, for state games, for like basketball games and stuff like that. Like, I didn't even go visit them as far as like the college choice. But when I went to Germany, just to go look and just to tour it and do all of that stuff, it was just something that was just like, this is it.
Yeah. And so for people who don't, have the chance to do, take that college visit, I know there are plenty of people who, maybe based on feeling and not even visiting the campus, they just know that that's where they want to go. But I think there's something to be said about being able to literally visit campus. Because again, I had that same experience of like, I went to an admitted students day in March and, just feeling like, you know what, nobody else from my graduating class is coming here. This will be good to get away. And it's obviously not any knock upon what you say, the local 5 schools, but just something about being able to like be in this totally different environment. Not too, like, still kind of the same distance, like the same distance from Kansas City to Des Moines is kind of the same distance from Kansas City to Manhattan, or even to, Missouri. Well, maybe Missouri State is a little bit farther from the city, but just like, all right, well, going to a different direction, the school's expensive as heck, but, here's, some different opportunities. So I can agree of like that feeling, being able to like, I feel like we're making a Drake commercial right now. But right, so we'll work that in. But just like knowing, all right, this is a new opportunity, and now like you can start in your classes your first year, all of that stuff. So I would agree on the feeling, but I wanted to go back to something that you were saying, or that we were just kind of talking about when it comes to Lincoln and Lincoln students, kind of that tradition, so to speak, of college being the way to go. And it's more of like a conversation starter. I don't have a specific question, but like when I think about the job that I have now with real world learning and how we've recognized like college isn't that only pathway to success. Like you said, people start school, but are they finishing in whatever specific time? Some people, it does take longer, life happens, families, children not being able to afford it, whatever the case may be, they don't like it, they don't really know what they want to study, obviously a lot of reasons. But just in thinking about what does that tell people about what success means? And like you said, your sister has found success in, as an entrepreneur. And obviously that's not an easy path, because it's
It's
like, all
not.
right, let me hone my craft. You still have to deal with people. Like, what if they thought they were getting this cake and I'm like, just, I'm sure that she, deals with a lot there, but just, like I said, not so much of a question, but just, again, when we think about like, how do we expose students to what all these different opportunities could be, and say like college is something you can do,
Yeah.
but you might go to college when you're 25 or 30, or you might get an associate's degree, you might get a certificate.
Well, I would say, like, to that point, like, Lincoln is a college prep school, so that's probably why a lot of us were college bound. Well, majority of every college bound, or that was their choice, because it's embedded. It's embedded into the curriculum, and then it's like the main focus. But I would say to like really spice it up, like getting more real world people in classrooms. Like I'm in, some math class, some calculus class, like bring somebody, that actually uses this in their career path.
Right.
Like,
Nobody believes that they're going to use this later, and sometimes you don't. But
yes, like for instance, that's one of the things where in my career path I don't use. But like for instance, I would love to go visit an English class, because like that's where I got my inspiration to be a writer and to come into doing marketing and communications, and really being in my field. It took those writing skills that I learned in middle school at Lincoln, in high school, and in college, that really culminated who I am today. So people would think like, oh, well, how does that relate? It relates a lot.
Yeah, every day.
The basis of who I am, pretty much. And so I think if we could take some really good, make some mentor mentee relationships, make them very strong and solid, not kind of like somebody that just kind of checks in every now and then, but like people who are actually invested in seeing these kids grow, and invested in seeing their careers grow. I mean, if somebody could be like you, how you are to me,
No.
I think that I'm trying to be all
No, no, but really, yeah.
Like if everybody could have a somebody like that, a lot more people would be successful. And when people talk about like, oh, we need to uplift our community, like that's ways where you personally can help uplift your community, even if it's one by one. People think you got to give all this money and this and that. No, sometimes it's just your time, it's just your advice, it's you saying maybe you need to fix this on your resume, or let's run through some interview prep questions. Like that's a lot of stuff people don't get. You don't well, Drake did have a class on it, but a lot of schools don't have a class on how do I get a multi-tier interview, or how do I get through this and that.
Right. Yeah, because those are intense.
And so it's like, if you've never done this before, like that mentor relationship, somebody who's been through that, who has been in your shoes, is super valuable. So I think introducing that at the high school level, I mean, maybe even at the middle school level, like maybe I'm talking too much, but
no, and it's, you say that, and that's like a part of my job now, because we're actually starting this college and career readiness course so this year is going to be for 8th graders, and so it's like this whole curriculum about pretty much everything you talked about. And like and I think when people are like, I wish I would have known this in high school. And sometimes we had those opportunities to learn it, but sometimes like we just had to experience some of these things on our own, because people are like, I wish they would have talked to us about money. Like, we probably did hear about it, but you don't realize like, all right, my $40,000-$50,000 salary is not actually $40,000 or $50,000. In actuality, like more money, more taxes, all it, like, it's, you do want to make a higher salary, but no, like benefits. Okay, do benefits come out? Do you get, all of that stuff?
Real world
stuff. Real world learning in action. So like I said, this 8th grade college and careers course, so then for the 2021-22 school year, it'll be for 9th graders, because we're starting like this pathway model where in 9th grade, you're choosing this selected path if you go to, if you don't go to Lincoln or Paseo. because those kind of already have those built-in pathways based on what you like to do.
Yeah.
So, and again, a part of what my full-time job is to help create some of those opportunities for professionals to come in. And I think it's for our students, it's not just seeing the person who's like, it's cool to meet the mayor, like he's a nice guy, whatever. But like seeing somebody who probably has more of a similar path to you that's like, that is successful in their own right, not just okay, billionaire rich, but
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah,
not to like, but like realistic job.
right,
Like I love everybody in the world, but everybody's not going to be the president of the United States. Everybody's going to be a mayor or everybody's not going to be a CEO. That's just the reality of life.
Right.
But who can we see in front of us that, has created a great career path for themselves, but also, is doing their passion in some way or form? Because a lot of people, I hate this about like the college pathway or whatever. A lot of people put it through the lens of making money. Like you go to college, you major in the best major so you can make the most.
Right. Right.
And that's just not realistic to life. And it's just not what everybody wants. Like everything can't be about a dollar amount all the time. Now you should get paid what you're worth.
You should get paid what you're worth. We want to reiterate that.
Yes, I'm not saying work for crumbs, but I think that people who are more passionate in their field, they do better and they contribute more to society. When you actually care about your job, you do things that are beyond, what you're even being asked. If you're just punching in 9 to 5 and you hate it and you dragging into work and you like, oh, I gotta see that's not creating a positive environment, and it's not creating positivity within yourself. You don't feel like you're accomplishing anything. You don't feel like you're contributing to society. So then what's the point of you doing it? For a check? For me, it doesn't equate. And I have made decisions where, this job might have been paying a lot more, but it made me miserable. I'm literally, crying or a headache every day. And sometimes you gotta let that stuff go. So I don't know. I think being able to get these kids to, because when you're that young, when you're like 17, 18, you have an idea of maybe what you want for your life, but you really don't know what it's going to turn out to be until it happens. And so it's kind of like, that's a big choice to make. Choosing to go to college is a huge, especially the debt part of it. It's a huge choice to make.
That's like a whole, we might have to come back.
That's a whole different conversation.
College debt.
But that's a really big choice to make. And so I think for some people, college can be where they discover themselves. Other people, college can be, where they like work on their already given talent. Some people go into college not knowing nothing about what they're good at. And then other people know what they're good at and they go into that to make themselves, better, make themselves presentable in a corporate or college way. I don't know how to explain that, but
no, I understand. And so since this is, having a focus on Black students, when you think about some of the things that you were saying, like I think they're even more important for Black students. So when we think about, like, historically speaking, generational wealth not being something that is passed on to us, and so education kind of being that way out for people to, achieve a certain level of economic success. But like you said, sometimes you end up getting saddled with debt. So it's like, I have a degree, but then I can't necessarily find a specific job. And it just is like kind of this snowball effect. So while you thought that you were trying to push yourself ahead, but even just, when I think about like the importance of mentorship, and I'm supposed to be, one of my sessions is talking to my lovely husband about mentorships and, what that means for Black students to, see themselves represented in a lot of spaces. Obviously, we can't talk about it, but I think, the things that you were saying are even more important for Black students, because, I used to think like, when musicians have their kids, like, why everybody want to be, why you want to be a musician? But it's like, if that's literally what you grew up around, like Blue Ivy, she
Yeah.
be the next Beyonce because her mama is Beyonce, her daddy is Jay-Z. Like, that's what she's around. LeBron James' son is about to take over the NBA, in a few years. His daddy is LeBron James. I don't think Michael Jordan's kids got the same thing. But when you think about just like that trajectory and what you're around, kind of this notion of like, you can't be what you can't see. So like, I do think there's like this innate responsibility for Black people, when we talk about uplifting and empowering, like, we have to give of our time. We don't always necessarily have the money, but if we can give of our time to students to show them like, hey, this is my experience, this is how I want to help you. So yeah, feel free to add in wherever it was in the question. But
say, like, the time is everything, and like seeing Black successful faces, like when I was in high school, I was in Catillion, Delta Catillion.
Yeah.
Seeing all these well-educated women. Yeah. So seeing all these well-educated women in that sense, and having them as mentors, it's like, that could be me. I mean, all of them are the president of the United States, but they have really great careers, and I still keep in touch with some of those people, and you are a Delta, of course. And so it's just like, even those little things, like putting your kids in these programs that.
Yeah, I didn't think about it like that, but good point.
Because that's all Black. Think about it. It's all Black.
Literally. Yeah.
And it's like, all these Black women are successful, and they're teaching me how to be successful, and they're taking us on college tours, and they're doing this and that, and we're taking etiquette classes, and we're learning all these things. And even a program like that only lasts for like 6 to 8 months, still very impactful, very huge portion of my life. Like, even at 29 years old, like, I still remember my cotillion like it happened yesterday,
Oh yeah, and there's like so many learning lessons, and I shoot myself all the time for not actually participating, but I did have a chance to be a mentor for a couple years. And yeah, I know, I'm like, because I didn't know the full value of it. I just saw the money and thought like, okay, I'm about to be a senior. I don't know. I just wish I would have asked more questions and taken in like what it could have truly meant, because I saw my friends do it, and that impact, like you said, it's the lifelong relationships. Like, oh, you were Catillion 2009 or whatever, that's like a thing. And even each year,
like, you have your own class of Catillion.
You have your own class of Catillion. There's like in the souvenir book, it's like a family tree of this person who was in Catillion. It's just, it's work. I don't want to take, with selling the ads and going to the meetings, but like you gain so much. And then like to see students that I work with, go through it, just even kind of how they grow in their own different ways. So like I said, I don't know how I neglected to even think of something like Catillion, because like you said, these are like the everyday people that you can touch, Black women, and even, people, men that are in fraternities, there's some connections there. You get a chance to like bond with your family and some of these different aspects, but those are the.
I did Catillion, and then, after me, 2 years after me, my sister did Catillion. Right. And so like, it more than likely will become a tradition in our family as well. Yeah. Passing that down. But I mean, I was the first to do it. Like, my older sister didn't do it. It's not something she probably even knew about. I don't think that she knew about it back then. But we just had one Delta came up to Lincoln Prep and was like, y'all need to sign up for Catillion. I was like, okay, what's
probably Miss Canary, God rest her soul. She So, but like, and she was the one. So she was my mom's teacher when she was in elementary school, like, and she was trying to, say, yeah, your daughter should do it. And, but like I said, it didn't equate. And, I'm still mad about it 15 years later, but I still, have been able to connect as a mentor. So.
Yeah. And I mean, but that's a good story to tell, as far as like, decisions you make at a younger age that maybe you regret, now backwards, or maybe that wasn't part of your path, but you now have been able to, be a mentor on the other end of it. So, It's all about choices.
It's all about choices.
Yes.
And I think I had a random tweet Friday um about like I think I said money doesn't buy happiness or something. Like money doesn't buy happiness, but it does give you freedom, and freedom
Oh yeah,
somehow,
I like
yeah.
that.
It's freedom equates to happiness, because it's like when, and it was kind of from, like I said, from the sense of money, where it's like if I have $1,000 and I got to decide between things that I have to pay for, but I'm gonna go without something, that is like unhappiness, if you don't have something that you need. And so, I know, like I said, we talked about not just having jobs just because it pays you well, because you could be unhappy there, but like being able to choose, some of the situations that you're in, like just the power of choice is like you can't measure that. And so,
And that's where I think we need to equip, younger students is finding power in their choice. And maybe their choice doesn't always match their parents. My dad would have loved for me to go to Mizzou.
right.
Match his choice. My dad wants me to live in Kansas City forever. I packed my bags and moved to Minneapolis for 5 years. Like,
Dang, it was 5.
yes,
Sheesh.
5 years, and my choice does not always align with what my parents want or what my family wants, or you really have to empower these students to find confidence in
Mhm.
seeking their own paths. I think
No,
that's
that's
where education and stuff really needs to cultivate, the power of choice and stop telling people which way they have to go, and giving them confidence on their own to know within themselves that they are making the right choice. And if they don't make the right choice, that they still learn something from it.
right. Like that's yeah, that felt like a mic drop moment. But no, that's real. Like, and I just wrote down, education should be that tool that equips people to make choices because of the power that comes with choices. I remember working, with 2020 leadership and like taking students to prison, and it was like a very draining experience, first of all. But just, the idea was like we're talking to people about their choices, but sometimes when you think about the choices that people made that ultimately led them to being in prison, it's like, well, they just didn't have all the tools. They weren't equipped with the right ones in some cases. So it's not to
Survival.
say, right, survival was more important than in those cases. But just thinking about, when you have that power, like when you were talking about, our parents. And I think a lot of times when we think about, well, I think about students that I work with, we're all in some ways trying to please our parents, even into adulthood. Sometimes we're like,
Yes.
okay, do you approve? But like, I'm not gonna say it directly. And I'm learning to just like, I know my mom enough to know, like, all right, well, she's probably not gonna like it, when I didn't come over for the July, whatever. Like, she'll be all right. But all right, I got the power to choose, where I want to be on this day. But sometimes in watching situations where people are coming from struggle, and they're like, okay, I got to make it for my family's sake, and I have to do this specific thing, but that doesn't leave them with as much power to pursue those passions or just like explore. I still remember when you were like dead set on being in Minneapolis, and you were like, I'm going and I'm gonna figure it out. And you did. And like I said, I didn't even realize 5 years had passed. But it's like, if you think about, if you have made the choice to appease your family more than yourself.
I mean, I talk with my dad about that all the time. Like, where do you think I would be if I just listened to you? Um, I mean, that sounds horrible.
I know, I
I mean, I
know.
might have not said it quite like that, but pretty much like that. Um, I don't know. I mean, I had to, and it wasn't fun the whole time. People think you make a
Right,
choice,
right.
and
It's
there
scary.
were, yes, it was scary. I only had like 2 weeks worth of clothes. My parents took my clothes to Minneapolis. Like, I had to look for jobs. I had to work jobs I hated for a while till I found the job. It took me probably like 8 to 9 months to find the job, the good one, that I did have for a long time while I was there. And so, it took a lot of struggle. Just because you make a choice don't mean it's about to be easy. So, a lot of
There's
people
also the lesson in that, like it's not going to
yeah,
be as simple. Sometimes it is, but sometimes you might not feel the effects of your choice until later, or
yeah, it
it's
doesn't.
not the instant gratification. It's not real. Honestly.
Yeah, and gratification does not come when you want it at all. It takes a long time to get to the point where like, okay, now I understand that struggle, or I had to go through that, or I needed to go to college to know that school ain't for me, or I needed to go to college to know that I really prefer to be an entrepreneur and or whatever, or I didn't go to college, so now I am an entrepreneur because I put my heart
Hmm.
and soul into that instead of putting my money into
Hmm.
higher education. So, I mean, it's just kind of like you don't really know until you do it, and that's hard to say to somebody that's like, okay, well, I need like some instructions, y'all. Y'all been giving us. I mean, because schooling is nothing but instruction. They've been given for 18 years this kid instruction on what they should be doing, what they should be learning, and so when it's time to be like, well, take your instruction book back, you go. It's like it is
Yeah.
terrifying to
Well,
be like,
and that's where now, like real world learning and just this idea, like teaching, education, whatever, is not just like me as the teacher imparting this wisdom and knowledge upon you. Like, okay, I've gone to school and I've learned how to be an English teacher, and I know the best way to do it. And so there's, some things. Students have been doing this for a while, but like some very intentional ways of like, all right, class of IB English, since we're familiar with that class. Here's what we're going to call a client connected project. Here's a problem. You all figure out the solution. You all do these different things so that you understand the processes. And it's not like you said, we're not giving you the answers. You go figure them out. We'll give you, you tell us what tools you might need. And so, like, those are where like the more powerful learning experiences can come in.
yeah,
So
and
it's
I mean,
not just
I agree
waiting.
too, completely, because like with college, I think that I learned more. I mean, I learned a lot at Drake, but I think
Yeah.
I learned a lot more being like in CBS and being vice
Hmm.
president of CBS.
Right. You
Like,
learned how to deal with people.
yes, being
And
vice
that's,
president of my dorm committee, or being in these service fraternities and stuff like that. I learned a lot more about how to juggle and all of that,
yeah.
than I did sitting in a classroom or writing a paper and stuff like that. It's like that real world.
Yeah. I mean, and those are like means to an end, because I mean, the whole education system is been built a certain way. So, like, there's some points that are just not going to change. But, like you said, it's more about, like, again, a Drake commercial, those meaningful learning experiences that feel like somewhere part of the mission statement. But, like, those are the things that you remember. And that's why, like, these activities like CBS are just like so important. There was, I feel like, we should have gotten some college credit, as leaders for CBS and stuff like that, because of like you dealing with a budget, you dealing with, politics, the student senate to, be able to get
Politics,
money. Politics of, Black people at a predominantly white institution, which kind of leads me to, I think, one of the questions that I had, and just like when you think about, all right, coming from the big city, quote unquote, going to Des Moines, which is actually a decent city to live in, when like we were going to, a tumble or anything like that. But just like what challenges, if you think back, because you coming up, what, on 10 years of, or
oh, sure.
right on, a start, a little 10, 11, because it's, yeah.
Yeah, it's about to be 11. So
Yeah.
I mean, I dropped in on Drake's campus, fall 2009. So,
Yeah.
whew, that's 11
Yeah.
years ago.
I know, but just like, do you remember, what challenges you thought you would face going from Kansas City to Des Moines? And, I think we talked a little bit about like the transition from Lincoln to Drake, but just
Yeah.
what do you remember? I remember your parents, they were so lovely dropping, well, y'all came to orientation and just, they were so excited to see me and Lori.
My overprotective parents. Anyway,
They were awesome.
no, I'm kidding. I would say that like, Drake was extremely different coming from Lincoln, the HBCUs of high schools, and then you go to
Right.
this very, this very like predominantly white institution, PWI. So you know, a lot of people would be just enamored with my voice or my accent, as they call it. I, you know, you get the $1 million curly hair questions
Oh
and
man.
stuff like that, and that's just surface level stuff. But I mean, even learning how to work through the system, and I mean, because college is an institution, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you still, you know, you got to figure out how to navigate things. Especially being in like CBS and stuff, you know, there was contentions there. We've had, you know, we had some definite times where it was times we had, you know, people we had to appease to get, you know, events to go and stuff like that. You know, everything wasn't easy. And so I think that going to a PWI, I mean, I adore HBCUs, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that they are extremely valuable and should always be an option and always be there. But going to a PWI is a different experience because you're kind of navigating and learning how to survive in a culture that mimics the how the United States works overall. And that sounds kind of but honestly, like when you get into business and corporate structures, and me being in and out of
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it is a lot more white faces and is a lot more white people in power. And going to a place like Drake, it was a lot more white students, mostly white. And you know, a lot of those people held positions of power, not only on a student level, but also, you know, whether it be certain deans and stuff like that. Like, you know, I think within that PWI though, within being
Mm-hmm.
at Drake, we made our own, like with CBS, made our own family own culture of what could mimic the feeling of what it may have been like at a
Mm-hmm.
HBCU. And I mean, I think that's a not just a means of survival, but it's just you create your own communities. Like you
Yeah.
create your community. Like we, you know, you got CBS. We had Unity, something called Unity Roundtable, which were all the multicultural groups together
Mm-hmm.
at Drake, and we threw the multicultural ball every year. So that's everything from like ASA, the African Student Association, to the Chinese Student
Mm-hmm.
Association. You know, different affinity groups on campus that had a multicultural, you know, twist to their organization. Like we would all come together to
Mm-hmm.
create things that we could have, because it was like, you know, these fraternities at Drake, they're not letting us come to their, you know, their balls or their parties and stuff like that. So we made our own and we did our own, and it became really popular, you know, stuff
Yeah.
like that. So it's like you learn how to do and make for yourself because you have to in those circumstances, where like in HBCU, like that's all already embedded into the culture. Like it's huge. Everybody comes back for homecoming every year, you know, stuff
Yeah.
like um someplace like Drake, homecoming ain't important. We waiting for relays.
Right.
Um, we're waiting for relays, and you know, everybody comes back for that. And it's just kind of like getting to know your environment and doing what you have doing what you have to do to thrive in those
Mm-hmm.
environments. And so, you know, for me, my field, to be exact, going through, I was in J school for a little bit, but decided to make a little shift.
Yeah.
Um, which was a personal choice
Yeah.
on my own, but I still ended up in marketing anyway as my field, in a lot of communication roles. And so I took what I learned there and, you know, used it in my career. But, you know, when I was in J school, there were people I had to navigate against and through, and I didn't enjoy that part, you know, and it was like, I just want to write. I want to be a writer. So let me just
Mm-hmm.
stick with my English major. And so I decided to do that. And for me, it was I make a lot of feelings choices.
I mean, I think that's like a testament to like you just staying true to who you are.
Myself. And I
Yeah.
mean, where my parents, my mom was like, I always thought you would just be on the news or you would be a reporter. I'm like, no, but you know, but that's what they saw for me. And but I saw something else for myself. And when I feel like something's not right for me, I changed from that, but that doesn't mean I didn't learn something. Like all those skills from J school, definitely used in my marketing and communication roles. So it's like that was really valuable to me, even though maybe I didn't stick with that portion of it. You know what I'm saying? So I learned how to, how to present myself, how not to say Des Moines. I learned that from you.
I know. It's okay.
You were like, no, it's Des Moines.
Oh man, that's funny. That's funny.
Yeah, and just how to present myself and I really learned how to be confident in my writing skills. Shout out to Megan Brown, my my professor. She was my advisor, all that. She's the person who kept me at Drake. Shout out to her. So, it was a unique path. And I'm not saying that there weren't days that I was crying my eyes out about to pack my bags and run from Drake to Kansas City, Missouri.
Of course.
But somebody asked me about this the other day, like, why would you go to Drake? And I'm just like, a lot of my life stems from that choice, that one choice.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't go to Drake, I wouldn't have met Tanae, which is my best friend, who lived in Minneapolis. I wouldn't have went to Minneapolis. I wouldn't have. And so everything is kind of like a chain reaction to a choice. And so,
and it's like one part changes, then like the rest of the story,
the whole story changes because there really is no connecting path to any of that except for the Drake experience. And then when we were talking about college choices, I didn't get into too much, but like when I was in high school, I was a very like shy kid. I wasn't like the kid who was bullied or anything like that. But I wasn't the cheerleader. I wasn't popular. I wasn't like, people knew me, but I'm not like this. I was very quiet. When I got to Drake, though, I got to change that narrative. And so maybe like the first semester I was a little quiet, but
I literally remember going, I think you were in Stallnaker and going to your room, and I think your roommate was from Minneapolis.
She was. She followed me my whole life, pretty much.
But I just remember it was like, okay, I'm like, she's gonna be okay. Like I know, it's not my job to like tell her what to do, but she'll be okay. Just first week of college, she'll be fine. And you are. So.
I mean, but what was I saying? Oh, that all those choices and stuff, and just being at Drake, like I got to change the narrative of me being like this quiet person. Yeah. And I think if I would have went to Mizzou, because I would have been following a really large core group of my peers that I already had from high school, that narrative wouldn't have been able to change because people, once people have their mind made up about you, you can't really change how they perceive you. Now, but when you start in a totally new environment, none of these people know you like that. They don't know. They don't know that you're quiet. They don't know if you are a nerd. They don't know anything. You get to like make your own narrative. And so I just got really involved and my voice got louder and louder. I made more of an impact. I joined too many.
And now nobody can shut you up. No.
True. That's why I'm like, you struggling through this because you're like, Gabby, talking a lot. I do talk.
No, you're good.
But now, like, because I became so involved, like, even people in college, like, there's like, when we first met you, you were quiet, but like, now you like taking over everything and like, pretty much running the place, as far as like extracurriculars and stuff like that, and just school and period. Like, I found my voice. Like, I was very, very shy and quiet, and like, I was sticking with that because that's what everybody knew about me, and that's, it worked for me at the time. But when I got to college, it was like, I did become popular. I did do a lot of stuff. I was involved heavily in extracurricular activities. So when I would like check in on friends that I went to high school with that went to college, and they're like, well, I just go to class. I'm like,
what? That don't even sound right.
I mean, but then Drake had a culture. Just kind of like how Lincoln had a culture. Drake had a culture that you participate in extracurriculars. I don't know one person who wasn't in some type of extracurricular activity. Most of the time, people were in about 3 or 4
Yeah.
consistent. I do not know a person who just sat in their room and didn't do anything and didn't touch the campus and just went to class. People like that don't go to Drake. Like, I don't know anyone like that. And maybe that's just Black people at Drake, but I actually feel like it's embedded into the whole school. But it's like, you better be doing something. You better find something you like. If it's paddleboard club, if it's
Right. Real something.
anything, like, find you a group anime, find you a group of friends. They had
Yeah.
a whole club that like wrote a magazine that was like, a satirical magazine. Like, they didn't want to be in the mainstream, so they made their own thing. And so I just think that, like, everything is what you make it. Every choice is what you make it. And if you can sit in your dorm room and just do your homework and come home and call your parents and call it a day, or you can get out there, you can get involved, whether that be at a PWI or a HBCU or any type of Ivy League. Get involved, get your voice heard, and be a part of what's happening. Like, don't let college just happen to you. You know what I'm saying? Like, actually be a part of it. Because, like, then what are you there for? What are you paying?
Well, yeah, like you said, just the tons of learning. And even, when I think about, I think I found like a resume from 2010 that I had. No, of mine. And so, like, being able to put, as a job orientation leader, these are this was a job, literally, we got paid, but it was also like, I was entrusted to work with students as they, came to this school. So just the involvement. But this was another reason why I wanted Lawrence to be a part of this. So, hey, Two Fly. But just when I think about him coming to Drake, and like, I think a part of it is like being able to be your full self, like you said, away from people that you've grown up with, that feel like they know you in some capacity, and just kind of that power to be, who you want to be. And I don't know, it just doesn't have to be so negative. But like you said, if you maybe would have stuck with the same people from high school, what would you have endured when it's like, oh, you different now? Like, no, I'm evolving, I'm changing. And sometimes people can get over
more me because I get to be more me. Like,
right.
Maybe this is always who I was, but I didn't have.
You didn't have that push to go be it.
Because there was already people taking up that, there was already popular people, was already people who were like at the forefront, and there was no space for me. And so it was like, it was easier to be quiet.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I mean, I wasn't quiet in high school, but I would say college was definitely a place to break out my shell. Like, I remember the first day of orientation, it was welcome weekend. People got caught on stage and we had to introduce ourselves. And Wanda will never like let me live this down when I was like, my name is Crystal, but my friends call me Crystal. Like, and so
I wouldn't let you live that down either.
Welcome week, everyone's like, hey, Crystal. And it was just like, all right, well, this is, my coming out party. So it was necessary and needed, and even, like, I guess for me, not falling into the shadow of, or my mom went here, but, so I mean, that was like 30 years between, or 20 something years between her going and me going. But, not just being like, oh, well, you just here because your mama went here. Like, no, this is where I wanted to go. And, this is who I can be myself. So awesome. All right. My final question. So to, circle back around about, Black students, when you think about like your collective experience, what is your call to action to any educator who works with Black students, whether that be K-12, college, but just if you work with students, what do they need to know, or what should they do for and to Black students?
Number one, believe in them. I mean, educators, it's your job not to dull down this person or their personality or whatever they bring to the table. Maybe you got the kid that is in the back of the classroom that draws all day. Please encourage that in a way that could help them. Don't like crush people's talents. Like, find the talent in them. Maybe it's not your subject area that they excel in, but once you do have help them discover that, make sure they flourish in that, and make sure that they can go to the next level in that. I think educators have so much more of a impact than they think they do. It's like, oh, these kids have hundreds of maybe 20 teachers in their life. But it's so much more than that. Like, the professors and teachers that have an impact on me, I still have relationships with. I still talk to them. I still go to them for advice for career. From everything of like, should I go and pursue a master's degree? Should I, do this and that? What is a smart move in this area? So I think being there for students, and then not making sure you push them and not coddle them. I can think of some times where, maybe I needed to be more pushed, especially in college. Like, I got a little lazy, and, I was the master of persuasion, and I would just, my little baby tear. I mean, look at this face. Like,
didn't know that about you.
I mean, it was sometimes where it was a struggle, and, where I should have, pushed myself more. And so, don't be extra tough on them because they're Black, but don't be extra easy on them because they're Black either. So it's kind of like you need to find that balance as an educator, to where you're helping the student excel and really helping them go to the next level, and the best way possible, and just speak positivity into them. If you have friends that may be in the field that student is interested in, make some introductions. That's some really good ways to help. Make some introductions, help find them a mentor, or, help them get involved in whatever way that is. Something as small as like going up to the high school and telling kids they should be in Catillion, or something as big as like, let me introduce you to this CEO of this company, blah, blah, blah. Like, it can be little, it can be big. Just try to make some kind of impact. Don't let the student just kind of waddle by. Like, be there, be present, and be impactful. So that's my advice to educators, at least. And, take with it what you may. So
I think you spoke a word that just felt like a good ending. And just it's been like an hour. It's been a great conversation though. I'm like reliving my, just thinking it back to different memories of high school and college. So Gabriell Butler, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Crystal.